Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We're so glad you're here. Before we get started, we want to note just a few housekeeping points. To avoid background noise, all participants will be muted for the duration of the webinar. We will be addressing questions at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions as the webinar continues, please enter them in the questions box, which is located on the right-hand side of your screen if viewing from a computer, or at the bottom of your screen if viewing from a phone. If you have any comments or concerns during this webinar, please also enter these into the questions box. We will review and address any immediate needs as they occur. A recording of this webinar will be emailed to each registrant tomorrow. The recording will also be available on our website at www.namimd.org for any individuals that were unable to register. After the webinar today, you'll be asked to complete a short survey on the aspects of this webinar that you felt were helpful, could be improved, and what you would like to see in future webinars. We plan to continue hosting educational webinars, and we ask that you please fill out the survey to let us know how NAMI Maryland can best support you during this time. I'll now hand it over to our moderator, Joe Ashworth.
Thank you, Marquise. Hello, everyone. And again, thank you for joining us today. My name's Joe Ashworth. I'm the former president of the NAMI Maryland Board of Directors, and I'll be today's moderator. We're glad that you could join us today. This is a very important topic, as most of you know. NAMI Maryland supports you in the hard work that you're doing, and we want you to benefit from your time with us this afternoon, where you'll hear from two experts in this field. Today, we're hosting Lieutenant Steve Thomas and Corporal Cory Eslick. They're both first responders, and they face traumas on and off the job, and they believe that you deserve support for both. When they're faced with trauma in the aftermath, we as first responders must be prepared to support them. This webinar will discuss the purpose of a peer support program and how the Arundel County Police Department has developed and operates their peer support program. I just have a parenthetical here. CEUs for police and corrections and EMS are provided for today's webinar, and a certificate of attendance will be sent to each registered participant tomorrow afternoon. So first, I want to introduce our two speakers. Lieutenant Steve Thomas. I think they might have the note. He's on your right. Is a CCISM. Yeah, he has a BA from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County in political science and sociology, and also an MA from the University of Baltimore in legal and ethical studies. Lieutenant Thomas started as a patrolman. Started as a patrolman with the Anne Arundel County Police Department in 1996, and he remained on patrol until 2016, when he became the department's CIT and peer support coordinator. In 2020, the Anne Arundel County Police Department's CIT unit was named the CIT International's CIT Unit of the Year. Lieutenant Thomas is the Anne Arundel County ICISF, that stands for International Critical Incident Stress Foundation, CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management Team Coordinator. Further, he's an ICISF approved instructor, and in the spring of 2019, he received the ICISF and Pioneering Spirit Award at their World Congress. Lieutenant Thomas is also a youth and adult mental health first aid instructor, and was the 2018 Mental Health First Aid Summit. At the Mental Health First Aid Summit in Washington, he was named a top 100 instructor in mental health first aid. In 2019, Lieutenant Thomas was awarded the PAARI Police Assisted Addiction Recovery Initiative Leadership Award for his role in developing and implementing Anne Arundel County's Safe Station program. Corporal Cory Eslick, whom I'm pleased to introduce, has 25 years experience as a law enforcement officer with 3 different agencies. He started his career at NSA and then moved to the Baltimore City Police Department. is currently working for Anne Arundel County Police Department, where he has served for the last 20 years. Corporal Eslick's experience ranges from a patrol officer to a school resource officer to also working with the crisis response unit. He is currently a crisis intervention team member and coordinates the Anne Arundel County Police Department's officers peer support program. Corporal Eslick is a certified instructor through Maryland Police Training Commission. He's certified to instruct the mental health, first aid, adult and youth realistic de-escalation course and the Maryland Model School Resource Officer training. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to the experts in this field. So it's all yours, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate NAMI and yourself inviting us to come here and present. And I'm here to present how we run peer support in Anne Arundel County. And this is something that's very important to me and something that I have a huge passion for. Just a little backstory for me and where my passion comes from. When I first started my police career some 25 years ago, before I left the academy, when I was in Baltimore City, I attended 4 or 5 police officers' funerals, which was traumatic, but also showed me the real life of police work. And then in my 25 years of police experience, I've seen numerous amount of traumatic incidents, and I've seen how it affects us as human beings. And then you have the side of things where we are humans. We have personal stories, we have personal tragedies, marriages that are lost, or children that die young, or children that are sick, or wives that are sick, significant others that are sick, those type of traumas. And so I started to realize that this is affecting me, it's affecting my peers, and nobody knows what we go through but officers and people that wear the badge and wear the gun every day. And so we started to develop this peer support program in Anne Arundel County. And I'm here today to kind of share with you what that program looks like and how we run our program on the daily.
So similarly, I have a similar story where it comes from my heart, the effects I had. A little over 20 years ago, I was involved in a fatal shooting, a line of duty shooting. Exactly 1 year later, my son was born with some significant healthcare issues. At that time, he was in the NICU at Hopkins. I had some extremely supportive supervisors who would let me every night, I would work midnights at 3 and 4 in the morning, go visit him in the hospital while I was working for an hour. And it definitely was where my professional career, where I was emotionally recovering, psychologically recovering from that line of duty shooting, as well as my personal with having an extremely sick son. Now I can tell you my son is thriving right now and is very healthy and doing very well. But at that point, it was really tough, and it gave me firsthand to understand how we take our jobs home with us, but we also bring our home life to the job with us, and how the paths cross, and it definitely can take a toll on us, especially in the course of a 20, 25, 30-year career. When you think about in mental health first aid, we talk about 20% of the people could have or do have a mental health crisis in a year. Think as police, the average police officer responds to 700 to 800 traumatic incidents in their career. And how do we carry that with us when you combine it with the tragedy and the trauma that we experience in our personal lives?
So we're going to kind of go through our peer support program. The purpose of our peer support program is to support the officers, of course, but we also expand it out and we support their families, whatever that looks like and whatever that kind of manifests in whatever each individual officer's lives. Like I said, that could be on the job type things, officer involved shooting, all the way down to just a call that just seems to affect them. They don't know why, but it just affects them. And it extends into their families. You know, if they have a child that they're struggling with, that's sick, or that's having some kind of difficulties, or a partner of theirs, or a family member, it's supporting those family members also, because we found that if we support the home life, the work life is also that much better.
And think about the effects when a community comes together to help. And one of the little things we do, I say little, but it has a huge impact, is when an officer needs help, their family needs help, we'll start food trains with our FOP auxiliary. And think how important that can be to a family, that they no longer have to worry about providing dinner every night for the family. It could be that someone in the family is in the hospital. It could be an injury. We've actually had one where an officer got injured and the wife was pregnant on bed rest with other children. Think of when we're there to help the family, how important it is with those little things like that to assist.
And of course, with those, it's, you know, to ease the effects of the officer's psyche. We're trying to normalize it's okay to not be okay. And we're there to help the officers leave the job as healthy mentally as they were when they joined. We all go through very strenuous tests to qualify as a police officer. And unfortunately, this job takes its toll. And historically, we haven't taken care of our officers on the back end. And they leave this job with, you know, injuries. Some of them are seen, but most of them are not seen. And we want to support them and hopefully get them to the end of their career as healthy as possible, mentally and physically. The ultimate one that I kind of like the most is we're trying to lower and hopefully ultimately end officer suicide. Our officer suicide numbers are large. We have more officers commit suicide in a year than we do that are killed in the line of duty. And that's a horrible tragedy and a horrible number. And we're trying to lower that and hopefully ultimately end it.
So we're involved in a lot of the training in our academy with our young, before they become officers in their initial training. And when we're down there, one of the things I always ask them is, who is the biggest threat to you for your safety? And remind the officers that it is themselves, that they go through a ton of training to make sure that they're physically going to be safe. But do we give enough to making sure that they are mentally safe from the traumas that they experience? And as Cory said, we are more dangerous to ourselves. For every officer that dies in the line of duty from violence, 3 died from suicide. And that's why we have to make a difference and change through that trajectory. And I'm really proud of what we're doing as a unit, of what Cory's doing, leading our peer support team, and to be helpful up front early on in people's careers.
Yeah, it's really important. We're finding that if we get involved with officers on that small little call that might kind of not sit right with them, then we're able to mitigate that and mitigate the traumas piling on and getting bigger and bigger and heavier and heavier. So now that we've talked to you about our support or our purpose, now we want to talk to you, how do officers get support? There are wide ranges of abilities for officers to get support. The one thing that our department has done is we have a peer support number you see there. That is a dedicated number. That number doesn't work for anything else but peer support. And that number goes directly to Lieutenant Thomas's cell phone. So at any given hour, any given moment, you call that number and you're going to get Lieutenant Thomas on the line, and you're going to be able to get whatever support you need. The other way is supervisors or any personnel in the department, or even significant others or partners can call Lieutenant Thomas, Sergeant Newborn, or myself and request for peer support. Just tell us what you need, tell us what's going on, and we will take it from there. The officers can reach out to peer support trained officers. We have developed and trained officers, and my goal is to have a peer support officer in every single specialized unit and patrol unit. Right now, we have them in every patrol unit. We have them in most specialized units. but we're looking for a couple other very specialized training or specialized units that we're trying to put some officers in. And the difficulty with that is we don't want to just train anybody. We don't want to just say, hey, you're in that unit, we're training you as a peer support officer. This peer support program and peer support officer has to be a calling. It has to be something that you desire, it has to be something that hits you in the heart. Because if it doesn't hit you in the heart, then you're just somebody calling. And so we wait for volunteers, and we try to talk to people that we see that calling in, and try to get them and encourage them to attend the training.
And some of the other real serious calls, or calls that touch your heartstrings, and there is no definition of it. It's that call, when you see it, you know it. It could be an officer responding to a SIDS death. It could be a fatal car accident. It could be actually us taking care of ourselves after we're doing death notifications from a fatal accident or working in a homicide. But we're there, it's recognizing supervisors calling us and saying, hey, Steve, Cory, we had an incident. We had a fatal SIDS death in which our officer was doing CPR on the baby that did not make it. And that same officer has a 1-year-old at home, and they're really feeling it. I can tell you, I felt it because in 1999, that happened to me. I didn't do CPR on the baby. However, I was on the scene of a SIDS baby. The first thing I did was go home and check and make sure my little girl was okay. I knew it. It touched my heartstrings. There's a term when our paths cross between our professional life and our personal life, when we personally relate to an incident. It could be that you're responding to an elderly person's death, but then you're taking care of your own elderly parents. Or it could be you're responding to an incident with a child and your children are the same age. It's any time that you personally relate to an incident, we're reaching out to make sure those officers are okay and all the officers on scene. When you talk about traumatic incidents, we're actually going through and we follow the ICISF model. It's International Critical Stress Foundation's Critical Incident Stress Management model, where we use their psychological first aid, their Safer R model of that, and then we do group interventions, including debriefings after these incidents, so that officers learn from the incident what happened together. They fill in each other's gaps, but they also heal together as a group, because they're there working every day as a group, as their own work family.
Yeah, and I'll give you an instance. We also try to pay attention to the radio and hear calls that are going out for service while we're working. And I can tell you a situation that we had was patrol got a call, and it was a call for a completed suicide. And it turned out to be some kind of a little bit of a domestic, husband and wife were separated, and it just got real ugly. And unfortunately, the husband decided to take his life. And it just seemed, over the radio, the call just seemed a little traumatic. And so I just went as peer support coordinator, and I showed up at the call, and I was just checking on officers. Hey, how you doing? Are you okay? Everything fine? And I came across the officer that was actually handling he was the primary officer. And I just looked at him when we had a minute, and I said, hey man, how you doing? You okay with this call? How's this affecting you? And he's like, man, this one's hard. And I said, okay, tell me a little bit about it. And what happened is, based on the story of what the husband and wife were going through, the separation and that type of stuff, my officer was experiencing the same thing at home and was having some difficulties at home. And he could see himself in this guy's position, and he had put himself in this position. So we just talked, and I just had a conversation with him, worked through it with him, found out that he was already attached to some supports and stuff like that. But he, at the very end of it, he was like, thank you so much for just coming and chatting with me. And that's really all peer support is. It's just having a conversation and saying, hey man, this sucks, and I'm here to hold and take on some of the weight that you're carrying.
But when it does cross that line, Corey and I, we have the ability to link officers to further assistance when that's necessary, when they do need professional help. And I'm proud to say the culture in our department is one is which everyone, for the most part, is accepting professional help when they need it. And part of the training we have is recognizing when that happens. Because let's face it, there's not enough clinicians in the world or even in our area for all 800 members of the department to go get professional help. So it's recognizing when that officer, or it could be a civilian. We do a lot with our radio room. We go in and debrief because a lot of times they are forgotten in the radio room. They'll hear a story coming in when the call taker's getting the call. The dispatchers hearing the story and they're picturing it in their minds. And then as officers get there, a lot of times they don't have closure. And we don't want them to be forgotten, so we're reaching out to them as well. Or the evidence collection technicians. Again, another group of civilians that often get forgotten, that we've reached out, we've trained members, civilians in those groups so that they're there helping as peer support as well.
We are also, we encourage our peer support officers in those units and in patrol to self-initiate the support for officers. If they see another officer that's struggling or needs a conversation, to have that conversation. Because me as the peer support coordinator, I work in a completely different office. I don't see a lot of patrol officers. And so my peer support officers that are trained, you're seeing your partners every day. You know the guy that's usually cutting up, making jokes, having a good time, and now he's kind of meandering through the hallway, very downtrodden and upset. Have a conversation, talk to him, figure out what's going on. So self-initiating the support is very, very important, because most of us, we don't reach out till it gets too bad. And what we're trying to encourage officers is let's figure out and let's realize that it's affecting them, so that we never get to the point where it's getting too bad.
And I'm proud to say another thing that we've done as a department, in our rules and regs, it states that we cannot get called in as part of an internal investigation. If someone reaches out to Corey for help, Corey doesn't tell me unless it's something I need to know. And internal affairs cannot call and say, hey, is so-and-so reaching out for help? Now, I will say, as part of the culture, though, internal affairs has called us and said, hey, we're hearing something. Can you go check on this person and see if they need help? Even whenever someone does get disciplined or they're under investigation, internal affairs make sure we know, because that's extremely traumatic. And we're looking at it that people, they may be in trouble today, but they're going to be back on the road after the investigation's done or the discipline's done. We need to get them back in as protective officers. And part of that's going to be peer support, reaching out to them, checking on them, helping in anything they can do, and then linking them if necessary.
So what does support look like for an officer? When the call for support comes in, like I said, the supervisors, Lieutenant Thomas, Sergeant Newborn, or myself receive the call. Then we decide, based on information received, what peer support officers should reach out. So what we've done with our peer support trained officers is I have designed a questionnaire, and I've given it to all of our trained officers, and they've given it back to me. And basically what it tells me is, what kind of things have you been through in your own personal life that you can provide assistance to our officers for? So what that looks like is officers that have unfortunately been divorced, or officers that have lost a child or a loved one, or officers that have been disciplined and suspended. Anything and everything that we consider trauma, if you've been through it, put it on the form. And that form is very private. The only person that has access to that form is myself or the two supervisors. And what we only use that form for when we get a call in from an officer. I'll give you an example. We got a call in from an officer who had unfortunately had a miscarriage. And nobody understands a miscarriage but another woman that has had a miscarriage. And so what we did is I was able to partner up those two officers and say, hey, can you do some peer support? And they were able to do peer support and kind of walk with each other and support each other through that tragic loss. So we do that, and that's how we decide who to pair up with who. The peer support officer is contacted, so I reach out to them and I give them a basic thing. Say, hey, this person needs peer support. Can you reach out to them? I don't go into detail. I want that officer that is being reached out to have carte blanche information, what they want to give them. If they don't want to talk, they don't want to talk, but they at least know somebody has reached out for them. So they reach out and say, hey, I'm Officer so-and-so with peer support. I'm hearing you're struggling with something. Can I help you? What's going on?
We've had a lot of officers join the peer support team and ask for the training after they've been helped. One example is with one officer who lost a teenage child, excuse me, to cancer. Afterwards, he said he went through our peer support training for the sole reason, he said, if anyone else has to go through what I went through, I need to give back for how I was helped. I want to be the person to help them. And I take that as an honor of our system working when that happens. We've had officers that have been involved in traumatic incidents as patrolmen join the same reason, saying, I was helped and now I'm giving back because of how I was helped.
Absolutely. The peer support officer is the control. They determine with the officer that's needing support, what do you need? Do you just need check-ins? Do you just need somebody to hear you out? Do you just need a listening ear? Or do you need a higher level of care? Are you to the point where you need to see somebody professional? Once that peer support officer gets involved, they run the show and they are having the conversation with the officer. They don't check back in with us. They don't say, hey, talk to them and this is what they told me. All of that stuff is confidential. The only time they check back in with us is to say, hey, this officer needs extra support. What can we give them? What do we have to offer? They need counseling. What are the counseling resources? And then we provide the resources to the peer support officer and they provide those resources to that officer. That's the only time that we get involved and back involved and stay involved with them is if they need a higher level of care.
And sometimes it may not be a higher level care for themselves, but it could be for a family member. There's been quite a few instances where we've been contacted saying a particular officer their child needed help with substance abuse treatment, where we were able, and it helps that Cory and I work, it's as CIT officers at a crisis response, where we're able to link them immediately up to treatment. And a lot of times we're the ones taking them to that treatment. They even add that extra special touch to it to let them know that they are not alone and we're there supporting the entire family.
The other nice thing about us being in CIT is we have access to clinicians. And there's been times where we've taken a clinician with us to the family to say, hey, here's what therapy looks like. Here's what seeing a counselor looks like. Here's what you can experience. And giving them information, basically firsthand knowledge from a therapist to kind of break that ice and let them know what that looks like. So proof is in the numbers. What are we doing in peer support? Here's what we do, and here's how we keep numbers, because we live in a world that's like proof to us that we need this system or we need this issue. Stats are kept, but the only thing that is kept for stats is how many individuals we've helped and how many hours. That's it. We don't keep names. We don't keep it, what they're dealing with. We don't keep any of that stuff. We just keep how many individuals have we helped and how many hours has it taken. The other thing that we do is we're trying to, because right now we don't have a budget, and I'm trying to convince the upper echelon to give us a budget. So I'm asking my peer support officers to kind of keep in mind, like, if you take somebody to coffee or you take somebody to lunch, keep those numbers. Let me know what that's costing so that when I do get to the point where I can create a budget and reimburse guys for that, I'll have some hard numbers that I can do.
But I think it's a testament to the officers that are involved, as Cory said earlier, their passion to help, that they're doing this on their own. They're spending money. They're not asking for reimbursement. They're just going out saying, hey, we're going to go get a cup of coffee and it's on me just so we can talk. And I think that's where the passion of the officers that are involved is what makes it work, along with Cory's passion. That is, he's going around, he wants this, he recognized from that officers need help. But the positive is we're there to help.
Yeah, and also these officers are not getting paid. A lot of times they're doing it while they're working, if it works out that way. But there's been times I've called officers at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night and say, hey, this officer needs support. Can you give him a call? they will call them. They don't get paid overtime for it. They don't get paid anything for it. They know that they are on a volunteer basis. We're going to try to pair up a support officer that's working, but if it's not and it's after hours, we give them a call and they jump right to it. So it's very important that they understand and that it's a passion. So the stats for our 2022, we didn't have any stats for previous years because we just finally figured out how to keep stats and not violate people's confidentiality. But in 2022, we helped in our department 263 officers, which is roughly a quarter of our sworn officers. And I can tell you right now, for the year 2023, we've surpassed that already. And we are well past the 263 officers supported already. But we did 555 hours spent doing peer support. So those are the numbers that we had just last year, and that's just us tracking it. And I can tell you right now that everybody sends in their stats. So that's probably the lowest number of the people that we're actually supporting.
Because actually what we've done is create a culture in which the times you're doing peer support and you don't even recognize you're doing peer support, because you're talking to a coworker, they're talking about what they have going on at home or at a scene of something's going on at the scene of an incident, and you don't even recognize it because it is so cultural at this point. And again, it's so welcoming from officers accepting the help.
And that's why we push out, it's just a conversation. We don't have to make this look clinical. We don't have to make this look professional. It's just a conversation, because you'll be amazed at how much relief and how much pressure is relieved from an officer by just being able to talk about it. So we want to talk to you about a specific case that we had here in Anne Arundel County. So we got word that an officer was involved in a on-duty physical struggle when he was trying to arrest somebody. It turned in really bad. It turned into a pretty severe situation where that particular officer's a weapon on his belt, not his gun, but another weapon was the suspect got that, and unfortunately didn't use it on him, but could have used it on him. And so that officer got injured, got a physical injury, and was off duty. The more we talked with that officer, the more we realized he's a prior veteran, and had some situations when he was deployed. And so he had some PTSD from those things and some things in his life. And so his previous PTSD combined with this physical injury, combined with the situation and how it all went down, he found himself in a traumatized environment, and he just couldn't get himself back to work. He was cleared by the county doctors to say, hey, he's physically ready to go back. He can go back to full duty. But he reported on himself to say, hey, I'm not ready. My head's not in it. I'm not ready. I'm struggling. I can't go back to full duty. So our department worked with him and worked with him and worked with him. Well, they got to the point where they were just like, we don't understand. This guy's got to go back to work, but he's telling us he can't go back to work. So thankfully, they reached out to us, CIT and peer support, and we got an officer and a clinician to go out and see him to kind of figure out, like, what's going on with you? Like you say you can't go back, but why can't you go back? And so we found out that he was just really struggling with why he got in the situation, how that guy got, how that person got my weapon off of my belt, and he was struggling with that. So what we figured out is, okay, we need to get this guy back in the game. And how do we get him back in the game without getting him injured? And so what we figured out is we got together with our wellness officer, and we said, hey, can you take him down to the academy? And what we did is we took him down to the academy and we run him through some scenarios that were very similar to the scenario that he got involved in. And we worked him through it, and we showed him where he was kind of lacking in some of his training, and we retrained him, and we just worked through it. We got him down there to kind of work out and get some of that energy out of him. And through that, we were able to work through his trauma, and we got him to a point, but we still needed that little bit of extra. And so Lieutenant Thomas was able to help connect the officer with Dr. Mitchell. So Dr. Mitchell got with him and was able to help him and perform the EMDR on him to kind of help him with some of the trauma that he brought to the job. This wasn't trauma that he got in the job, but it was trauma he brought to the job. And through that work and through the peer support and through the wellness officer, we were able to get that officer back to full duty. And that officer is back to full duty. He went from the department saying, hey, we got to separate him from the department, he'll never be police again, to now that officer is back full duty and working and very successful in the job.
Think about that, the long-term repercussions of that. Yeah, we put a lot of time to help him, but we saved his career. And it's really important, and he's very thankful for that. Part of that, he is now a member of our peer support team, where he's giving back, helping others, saying, hey, I was helped, and now it's my turn to help someone else that could be going through something similar to what I went through.
And the other thing that's a benefit, not only is it a benefit for him and we saved his career, but it's a benefit for the department, because we saved all that money we pour into officers, we saved, because he's now a full duty officer. We didn't have to fire him. We didn't have to eat the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they spend to train us every year. So that's a very successful outcome. The last slide that we have for you and the last information we have is just a breakdown of what it looks like for our peer support. Our breakdown of our members, we have a captain that's part of our peer support program, all the way down to officers. And it's very important that we have this chain, because you think a captain, who's a captain going to peer support? We got other captains, we got our deputy chiefs, we got our upper command staff. We can't send an officer to in to support our chief. It just doesn't work, right? Because what does an officer know about a chief? So our captain assists us in that kind of atmosphere of the upper echelon of our department, because they're facing traumas too, whether it's on duty or off duty. And then you can see the breakdown of assignments from our patrol units to our specialized units, and where our officers are peer supporting.
So with this, I think it shows the diversity of our team. Really there to help everyone. Some of the numbers that aren't on there are some of the civilians we've also trained. And we've also responded out to help other agencies when they've needed assistance. We're extremely involved with the United States Capitol Police, helping them after the insurrection. Cory and myself were both there numerous times, as well as actually helping train them for their own peer support team. So I think we're a little ahead schedule. So if anyone has any questions, we're absolutely willing to take them.
Lieutenant Thomas, I thank you again. I guess what really struck me is just what a valuable service you're providing to the community, and most importantly, to first responders. You're really giving them a safe, effective way and confidential way to have really important issues worked through. And I have family members that are in the military, and I imagine there's in the police departments and other first responder entities, there's a lot of organizational and self-imposed stigma. And I think you're helping to break down those barriers by providing that. So anyway, it's a great time of need, and this is definitely called for. I hope you get funding in the budget. Good luck on that.
If I can add, Joe, it's one of the things I call it our culture of caring. Mm-hmm. We've had quite a few, and we talked earlier about some of the officers with children with substance use, mm-hmm. but we also have officers, we are part of the community. We have the same concerns and challenges as every other community member. So we do have officers who have family members, friends with traditional mental health challenges, mm-hmm. where we've had officers where I can tell you one officer in the department where I IEP'd that officer's child twice in the same day until the child went and got the appropriate inpatient treatment. That officer is extremely appreciative and understands and says, hey, I was treated this way, and then they treat the community the same way they're treated by us. And that's where I talk about is changing policing to be helpful and not hurtful in a time of need, that it carries over. And the greatest customer service organization in the world is Disney. And one of their business models is you treat your employees the way you expect them to treat the community, because it carries over. And we see it firsthand.
Absolutely. So as Lieutenant Thomas suggested, we want to open the webinar now for any questions that the attendees may have. Please try to remember to remain muted to avoid any background noise. Mine's on the left-hand side, but it says in my notes that it might be on the right-hand side. You should have a box where there's a drop-down menu for questions and to chat. So if you're viewing from a phone, it would be on the bottom of your device. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Corporal Eslick or Sergeant Thomas, or if you have a comment about the webinar today, please do so now. Enter those questions into the question box. If we don't have time to answer all the questions today, we will provide our contact information at the end of the webinar for anyone who may wish to reach us. I'm able to see questions that may come in. I don't see any at this point, but I believe Marquise and Danielle are keeping track of any questions that come up in the chat. So I'll turn it over to the audience now for any questions that you might have.
All right, so Lieutenant Thomas and Corporal Eslick, we have a question from Katie Binger. She says, can any officers call, and how can a mental health clinician become a part of the assistance process?
So anyone can call in, yes, for help as a peer. If you are in the area, we actually do have a variety of different clinicians that we reach out to help. So if you want to contact us, we can get your information and talk to you about possibly being someone that we would refer people to. One of the last year I actually did a presentation with Steve Plummer, and it's one of the things that we've learned is it's not easy being a clinician for officers. And the reason we say that is part of the uniqueness of what we do. And one of the problems that we've seen happen at times, complaints I'll say that officers have had of clinicians is sometimes they get caught up in the police stories, and they lose touch with why they're there. They start getting caught up in the incident and lose focus that they're there for the officer that they're assisting. But we would gladly get your information, and you can reach out to us.
Okay, we have another question from David from On Our Own of Howard County. He says he is a peer recovery specialist and he wants to be able to work with the police in a person's crisis situations. He says we have used CIT in the past with Howard County Police. And he also asks, what is EMDR?
Eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's I could talk for hours on it, but it's a way for to recategorize how we remember trauma in our brains and sort of to follow it away properly. The trauma, and I'm explaining it in a layperson way, but when we have that trauma, we don't properly file it away in our brain, and it's a way to help people with that.
All right, we have another question from Mark. He says, are your team members full-time in the unit, or is this duty additional to primary duties?
We have no full-time officers. We're actually trying to get my position as the coordinator to be a full-time position, teamed up with our wellness officer, but none of our officers are full-time. They are all working in whatever specialized unit, including myself in CIT, we're all working in our units and on the day grinding with our peers.
All right. Do you use retirees as peer supporters?
That's a great question. Yes, we do. I have started to develop, and as my peer support officers are retiring, I snag them and hold on to them because my ultimate goal, and I've been rolling that out, is as an officer gets ready and files his retirement paperwork, I pair them up with a peer support officer that's already retired to say, hey, here's what to expect. Here's the pitfalls that I've found in. Here's the great things about being retired. Here's what happens when you get retired of you no longer have that connection with police. So we do have retirees, and they are partnering with our officers that are getting ready to retire or have filed retirement, or our officers that are retired and we hear that they lost their partner or they're struggling with some health conditions, and we get them tapped in.
And to add to that, think how traumatic it is for that officer who doesn't get to dictate their own retirement, but is dictated through injury. And that can be far more, not that you can compare trauma to each other, but how tough that can be for that person that didn't get to dictate their own retirement, gets hurt, and then they can no longer do the job and is forced in retirement. Having someone that they can talk to that's been through that themselves can be really powerful and helpful.
I believe this question, I don't know if it's been answered or not, but could you tell us what CIT stands for?
So it's Crisis Intervention Team. So in Anne Arundel County, it's a little bit different than anyone else. You hear of everyone talking about that we need to integrate mental health into the police department. We've actually done it the opposite. We've integrated the police department into our crisis system, which is part of the mental health agency. So in the unit, it's myself, a sergeant, it's Sergeant Newborn, and Cory, it's Cory and another 7 officers, 8 total in the unit. We have another total in the department, I think around 220 officers trained in the CIT International 40-hour CIT class. That training is in addition to every officer in the department since 2015 has been trained in mental health first aid. And then we also train officers in the ICISF CISM model, utilizing the Safer R psychological first aid model, and then the group interventions. And I think we're up to 80 to 90 officers, if you do it, officers that are trained in that. And all the trainings actually complement each other.
Like a building blocks is the way I look at it.
We have another question. Have any of the officers been through, or is the department interested in using the Copeland Center for Wellness and Recovery's Wellness Recovery Action Planning?
So I'm not familiar with it.
I'm not familiar with it either.
Okay. Another question. Have you shared this model with the military? They have a lot of suicide.
So this is actually based, so the military has received and are involved in some of ICISF training, but I can't speak specifically with that.
Okay. How can first responder organizations be more proactive about their staff person's mental health?
I think it starts both from the top down and from the bottom up. You really, when you have officers that are there on their own, helping others and self-select to do that, but also having buy-in from the top down. For us as an agency, working, I was not in the CIT unit at the time, but I was instrumental as a lieutenant in starting it. And we had one major incident where we had I'll say a 18-year-old child brutally attacked 2 younger siblings, in which one survived and one died. It was an extremely horrific incident for the officers involved. I had been through a lot of the ICISF classes and training. I got involved. We started doing follow-up to the incident for the officers that were the group interventions with them, individual. We worked with communications after that incident. The department saw the benefit of that and actually had people reaching out sending messages up to command staff saying, thank you, it really helped me a lot. That really was a catapult for us and where we are today. And that was back in the fall of 2016, because they saw firsthand the positive results.
And I think also it's a culture shift. We have found here in the county that our younger officers, they buy into this stuff already because they have been talked about it in schools and college. And, you know, our young people, unfortunately, have experienced a lot of trauma. And so they already buy into it. And so what we have found is we are working backwards. Our young officers, they're there. They're like, we want support. We want to talk to a peer officer. We want this, we want that. And we're starting to see our older officers start to come on board and say, okay, I'm seeing how this is working. Now I'm buying into it. So you kind of just, and I think a lot of what's helped us as officers is getting the training, getting the mental health first aid, and realizing, hey, it doesn't make you crazy. Sorry, it doesn't make you crazy because you're dealing with trauma or because you're, having these feelings. And so it's just a culture shift, and you can't change it overnight. You got to keep with it. You got to keep building it. You got to celebrate the wins and just kind of learn from the losses.
Thank you. How can clinicians get in touch with you to assist?
So if they want, they can email me. My email is p01225@aacounty.org. Again, it's p01225@aacounty.org.
All right. And what would be the best contact information to use to discuss further opportunities to help? Okay, you just gave the email.
And if actually, Marquise, if you want, I can actually share my clinical partner, the Director of Crisis Response, Jen Corbin, and I wrote a journal article with Dr. Everly from Hopkins on our response to the Capitol Gazette shooting. It's a newspaper, and how we assisted not just the officers, but the community. I'll forward that to you if you want to send it out to everyone that was in attendance today. And it'll give our comprehensive response to help everyone psychologically after that incident.
Okay. And what support or resources are there available for those who want to set up a first responders peer program?
I know for us, we relied heavily on ICISF, and they have a lot of resources. They have other teams, a lot of trainings. If you go to their website, there's a lot of information there. And their website's icisf.org.
All right. And how can you reduce impact of vicarious trauma?
Well, the key is self-care, and being there, having healthy coping strategies. And that goes along with our first presentation in the series with Tim Betts in our wellness program, is trying to do things up front of discussing proper physical health, proper nutrition. And when you follow in our 5 pillars of physical wellness, mental wellness, family wellness, financial wellness, and spiritual wellness, whatever it is for that person, that creates that psychological body armor. That we know incidents are going to happen, but what kind of resiliency do we have? And that's where the psychological body armor really helps, of talking about and having people healthy up front before they're involved in these incidents.
And I guess here's the last question. What recommendations can you offer to assist PG public safety organizations to assist with fair and equitable treatment of staff?
So that's a tough one. We do work hand in hand a lot. with Sergeant Plum in Prince George's County, who was in charge of their psych services, in which their psych services is solely for officer wellness after traumatic incidents.
All right. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon, and thank you again to Lieutenant Thomas and Corporal Eslick and Joe for volunteering your time this afternoon for this exceedingly useful discussion. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and will be emailed to registrants tomorrow. The webinar will also be uploaded to our website at www.namimd.org for any individuals who are able to register for the webinar today. We hope that this webinar has been helpful for you this afternoon. At the end of the webinar today, you'll be asked to complete a short survey on the aspects of this webinar that you felt were helpful, could be improved, and what you would like to see in future webinars. We plan to continue hosting educational webinars, and this survey will help determine how NAMI Maryland can best support you during this time. We wish you all a safe and healthy rest of your week, and please do not hesitate to reach out to us through our website or by phone at 410-884-8691 should you need additional resources or support. Have a great rest of your day.
Ready to connect.